everyone, you would have seen my video, if you follow me or if you scroll back a few videos, of all of the books to be read over Christmas that I had from the library. Now, several of them were Agatha Christie. I've still got, and then there were none, and the last Miss Marple, I'm waiting on the first Miss Marple from the library. I should be picking that up today. But I've got the first and last Poirot. So The Mysterious Affair at Styles and then Curtain. So it's the first and last, and they both start at the estate called Styles. So I'll just read, for those who don't know of them, the blurb. So, Hercule Poirot's first case. After the Great War, life can never be the same again. Wounds need healing and the horror of violent death banished into memory. Captain Arthur Hastings is invited to the rolling country estate of Styles to recuperate from injuries sustained at the front. It is the last place he expects to encounter murder. Fortunately, he knows a former detective, a Belgian refugee who has grown bored of retirement. So that was the first Poirot. The last, which she wrote, I think 10 or 20 years later, but was published after her death in 1975. This Hastings will be my last case. It will be, too, my most interesting case and my most interesting criminal. Captain Hastings' invitation to a reunion with his old friend Hercule Poirot brings them full circle back to the rambling country house of Styles, where they solve their first murder together. But both Poirot and Styles have seen better days. Despite being crippled with arthritis, there seems to be nothing wrong with the great detective's little grey cells, until he brands one of the seemingly harmless guests a 5-time murderer. Have Hercule Poirot's deductive instincts finally deserted him? Or is there really a serial killer determined to bring down the curtain on all of them? Now, like a lot of people, I have seen all of the David Suchet Poirot series. And Curtain was the very last episode they made. I don't recall whether the first one was. I'm assuming it was, considering he played Poirot for 25 years. I've seen a couple of the movies, but not all the way through with Peter Ustinov. No. Surprisingly, one of them also featured Angela Lansbury, who then went on to play Agatha, Miss Marple, in one of Agatha's Marple books, The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, with her old friend, some little known actress called Elizabeth Taylor, who they were in, National Velvet together. And of course, Angela went on to play Jessica Fletcher a decade or so later. So everything kind of goes full circle. Now, I've never read an Agatha Christie book before, so I went for these two, plus the Marples, and then there were none, because I'm doing a murder mystery that I will read that to get some ideas from, which I've been doing all year anyway. Now, remembering these were written 100 plus years ago, I am putting this out on January the 12th, which is the 50th anniversary of her death. The Queen of Crime and the Queen of Mystery, Agatha Christie, died 50 years ago today, January 12th, 1976. This year, 2026, is 100 years since her disappearance, her mysterious disappearance. So, kind of a nice round-figured anniversary for both of her. For her, two, things that happened in her life, unfortunately her passing and her disappearance. So I've read these two. Now, remembering they were written 100 plus years ago, it's very basic. So it's written well enough for the time. A lot of people keep going, oh, it's not a well-written book. Well, for the time, I would say it was well written. People devoured them, so it was obviously written well enough for them to enjoy. It was simple. It was easy to read. Nothing was complicated about it. If you are into this type of book, it would be enjoyable. I just read them for the sake of seeing what they were like. Descriptive wise, a lot of authors these days are all, myself included, I'm not putting enough description here. Do I need to describe them? Do I need to describe every action? Do I need to describe what a room looks like? Blah, 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 blah. And, sometimes we agonise whether we've put enough or not enough, or, whether we need to change it, or next to no description. Which I also found with Pride and Prejudice of Jane Austen, which I had to just skim. I could not read that. Description-wise, she did the basics. So she would describe the person, move on. She would describe a room or a house and move on. She didn't describe a lot of actions. Sometimes you just kind of had to invent it in your head and have them move from room to room or wherever. So there wasn't a lot of action of people getting places, which is fine. It was still readable. So overall, they're actually pretty good stories. Remembering that they were written back in the 1900s, you know, well over 100 years ago. Curtin came out after her death, although this says 1975, she died in 1976. But she wrote it during the war, so, you know, she wrote this before she finished, actually, the Poirot stories, Curtin. And she kept it in the safe so that her son, her daughter and son-in-law and her grandson could have the money from it. Overall, Agatha Christie, if it's a really basic murder mystery, a quick read, simple basic English, I'd recommend them. She doesn't go into massive detail. You don't get bogged down in it. You don't get bogged down in words that, you know, you don't know, you need to look up. It's like, oh, what's that, you know? Personally, I think when authors use words that most people wouldn't know, they're just showing off, you know. They're being kind of like Sheldon on Big Bang. It's just, he just has to show off to show that he's got a higher IQ than everyone else. Personally, I don't like it. I don't like having to look up a dictionary, or if I'm online, you know, check Google for what something means. So really simple, really basic reads, really easy to read murder mysteries. You know, I can see why everybody is into Agatha Christie. I've always watched the shows. I've read Lucy Worsley's book. I even have it. I've got Agatha's autobiography, which I haven't read yet. I've got the 25th anniversary. I haven't read any of her other books that she released, like the Grand Tour and the one about her being in Baghdad with Max. So, yeah. So, The Mysterious Affair at Styles and Curtin, First and Last Poirot, No Doubt, The Marples, and Then There Were None, which was not its original title. It had 3 titles, that one, are all going to be written basically the same. So, yeah, I can see why people enjoyed it, and they're not books that I will continue reading simply because I've watched the TV shows and, you know, all the Marples. I actually preferred Geraldine as Miss Marple. I didn't like Joan, or Julia wasn't all that great. But, yeah, so they are my very first Agatha Christie books that I've read ever in 51 and a half years of my life. Mysterious Affair at Styles and Curtin, The First and Last Poirot by Agatha Christie. So, absolutely, go read them. What would I give them out of 10? 7? Simply because they are basic, but they're still entertaining. And 7 is still good. It's like, you know, 4 stars, you know. So, is my first and last Poirot and my very first Agatha Christie books.